far reaches the Eastern Cape. And so this is a first for me, and I'm sure a first for Nosintu. And yeah, hopefully it goes well. So welcome to this webinar. This is going to be sharing our experiences with community engagement and running effective projects. For some of you might already know the Bulungula Incubator, but for those who don't, it's sorry. There we go. It's located in a very remote part of the Eastern Cape in the former Transkei. If you drew a line straight down from Lesotho to the coast, you would reach us. A very impoverished area which didn't have any form of infrastructure. A lot has changed in the last 20 years, and we've done lots of work in education, health, youth development, agriculture, and we've learned a lot during that period. It's quite a unique area, a very remote rural area, so you'll have to think about what lessons we share here will be relevant to your setting and and apply it appropriately. But I think definitely, even though we're in a remote traditional area, there'll be many lessons that you can learn from. Just to give you our goal, sustainably end poverty in a generation while enhancing community life and cohesiveness. So that's the overall goal, and if you're welcome to visit our website if you want to see more about all the various projects that we run. This presentation, this webinar, is going to cover just the following aspects of community stakeholder engagement. We're going to be talking about the community members we serve and how we engage with them. We talk about traditional leadership, also engaging with government at all the various levels, and other NGOs and institutions that you might find in and around the community. So I'm going to be jumping between myself and Nosintu to give our different perspectives, and we might swap in between and add comments here and there. And then at the end of this talk, we'll be open to any questions. Those questions and answers might go beyond the half an hour we allotted for this talk. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so engaging with communities. So as I said originally, this is coming very much from a personal perspective in terms of the work we've done as an organization. We didn't come from a very theoretical basis, and we didn't necessarily study this approach. And so what I'm sharing here is what we've learned just from practical experience here in a very remote setting. So the first point I want to make when we talk about communities is often in the discourse that one hears out there, it's the communities, it's kind of like they or them, and I really think one of the first most important things one needs to do is to get rid of this concept of them and us, and understand that actually not just in our community, in our community there's only us. And to be honest, in South Africa and the world, there's only us. There's so much talk of they in modern discourse, and actually it's really, we're just all here trying to make a better place, in a better world. So I think that's our starting point when we talk about the community, is that we're talking about our community and not they. So in the traditional communities where we work, this is a communal land rights area with a traditional leadership and a very intact communities where people have lived for many, many generations in a traditional Bomvana, which is a subset of the Xhosa community. And one of the main ways that these communities are managed is through community meetings. We have community leaders that Ibodi, they're called, that are elected, and then regular community meetings are held either every 2 weeks or once a month, depending on what issues come up. And so that's one of the first spaces where we engage as an NGO, is to go to meetings and to make sure that when you're attending community meetings, that you don't just come with your issue, whatever you want to raise, and then disappear. As a member of the community, you're expected to sit through the entire community meeting if possible, and to hear all the issues that range from very serious issues to fairly small issues, but that's what builds community cohesiveness. And so I think it's really important that any NGOs working in traditional rural areas make an effort to attend, even when they have nothing to raise. And so that might mean you as leaders or founders, or potentially also appointing a community liaison person who will just make sure that you're present at community meetings. From those community meetings, it often then makes sense to move to item number 3 on that list, which is community subcommittees. And those are generally useful because a big community with 100 people, it's quite hard to actually, take decisions and be dynamic. And so often communities will elect subcommittees. It could be a parent committee who's going to be operating at the preschool to take decisions there, youth committees, committees about particular issues. If it's a road issue or a water issue, there'll be a subcommittee elected, and then you'll work closely with those subcommittees, and then return back to the full community meeting at a later point with your decisions or interventions, and then the community will say yes or no, or put their input into it. But I find that's a very effective way to get stuff done in this context. So yeah, setting or requesting community subcommittees to deal with particular issues is very helpful. And also often what the communities will do is, even the organization as it grows, and our organization's grown a lot now, we have almost 160 employees and do a lot of different projects. Eventually the community might elect a subcommittee that will just work hand in hand with the organization on an ongoing basis, so that when we have issues, first that subcommittee, and then the subcommittee will then bring it back to the full community to say which issues they see as being relevant for the whole community to decide on. The one important issue that I want to highlight here is to make sure that you report back to communities, to ensure that it's not you're not only arriving when you have a problem, because a lot of times that's the complaint of communities, that whenever there's a problem, there was some issue that's going on that's facing the organization, then the organization comes running to the community for help. But other than that, there's very little communication. So I think it's really important to be focusing on reporting back about issues that you have already discussed, and even just providing updates as to what's happening in the organization and how it interacts with the community. That's really genuinely appreciated. One that I think is missed a lot by NGOs working in these deep rural settings is the issue around recruitment practices. Often in a remote community like ours, there'll be jobs available that might be quite, let's say, not requiring tertiary or skills. It might be actually, cleaning jobs or security jobs, or sorry, I'm just going to mute someone here. Jobs that are what one would term low-skilled jobs. And it's quite important that one thinks through the recruitment process for those jobs. So typically the way we do it here is, when there's a job that we believe there would be people within the community who have the skills available, we would start at one of those community meetings and say that we need 2 people, this is the rough profile of who they are, and then the community will know very well who the members of the community who are in the greatest hardship. People who don't have an income, they don't have a grant, or they don't have family work on the mines or something like that. And so that can be a very effective way to ensure that jobs like that go to the most needy people in the community. Even skilled jobs should be first brought to the community meetings. Even if you think there might not be anyone from the community who could perform that role, for example, a nurse or a high school teacher. In our community, we don't have people with those qualifications. But bringing those job opportunities first to your general community meeting will result in often people who have family or contacts who might not be from that direct village nearby to apply. And that's always a better way to do things, because the hardest part of working in remote rural community is to keep skilled people from far away living there for the long term, because often it's life in a remote village is difficult in some ways. And then the last point I'll make on this issue is, just when working in remote rural communities, to be very conscious of inequality. The organizations internationally and locally will often bring highly skilled people into a remote community, little awareness of just quality that is being developed, where communities are surviving on two.
Good. How's it with you?
That's much better. How we talk.
Okay, sorry guys, if you can just mute your microphone. We're trying our best here to mute it. We're not succeeding necessarily. Just to be aware into the community that that you are be just aware of it. That we can't have a situation where people come from outside into remote rural communities and bring problems of inequality and creating a sense of very rich and poor. So I think often one has to just accept that if you come into work in a remote community, one has to make a concession around income and realize that, whereas you might not earn as much as you would be earning in a city or in another place, another country, that the upside of living in a remote community is you get to have an amazing quality of life living in a traditional setting where it's very different from life elsewhere. So I think it just needs people to be conscious of what inequality brings to a community and not to do damage. So that's for me on that section. And now I'm going to hand over to Nosintu, who is, as I said, our traditional leader amongst many other roles that she plays. And I'll let her talk about how one partners with traditional leadership. Over to you, Fung.
Okay, thank you, Dave, and good morning, everybody. I hope I'm clear. My name is Nosintu Kwebindlala of Vuyolwethu Jaxa or Fungi Jaxa. As Dave had said, I have so many names depending on which cap do I wear on that day. And I will be talking about partnering with traditional leadership. I am the Deputy Senior Traditional Leader for Jalamba Traditional Council, which is an area where the Bulungula Incubator is located. Firstly, we want to talk about role of traditional leadership in rural communities, which is quite key in terms of development, or if you are a new organization, you want to work with that particular community. Which often many organizations tend to overlook. And as we opened our slides to this morning, we had said there is no them, there's only us. So the traditional leadership plays that role of integrating the us, which is the organization that is just joined the community and the community that they are going to work with. So the traditional leadership plays a very important role because communities always say, what we've discovered is that you must always make people of that community be an inclusive part of what you are going to do. So we always say there's nothing for them without them. And the traditional leadership plays that link between the organization and also the community that we are going to work with. And in traditional leadership, we have different levels, if you want to call them, which you should always engage with. For example, in any village, you will always have an ibodi, which some people call it a sub-headman. That's where the engagement starts because that is within the community that we are working with. So the e-body or the sub-headmen represent the traditional leadership in that small area that we are located within. And then the second level of traditional leadership where you engage on, because the e-bodies, they report to a headman, which normally it is called Inkosi Elali. That's the second level of traditional leadership that you need to engage on. So once you've engaged with your e-body, then your e-body will go with you to go and meet Inkosi Elali so that you could be able to discuss all the other issues that you're going to work with. Then the last step of level of traditional leadership is where it's called a senior traditional leader, but elalini people call it chief. Sorry, can you just unmute yourself? Just check about who's. Yeah.
Morning.
Okay. Thank you. So I was just talking about the last level of the last level of traditional leadership, which is most people call it chief, or which is a senior traditional leader, which is the last step or last level in the levels of traditional leadership. When everything is done from Ibodi level to Inkosi Elali, which is the headman, everything goes up now to your senior traditional leader, and you'll be able to discuss any issues or any developments that you want to do, and that's where you actually get the stamp of everything that you want to do, and also you get suggestions, anything that the traditional leadership think that it might be a hinder in what you want to do. And that's where you get most of the advices on how to engage on issues and how to run the organization within that community. As we had mentioned before, regular information sharing it's so vital. Don't think that this is too small to report to traditional leadership. Anything that you want to share, it's better to go and engage with them, be it's small or you think it's big, but always engage the communities so that everyone is online, and you can be able to get advices to say, oh no, this is not going to work, or we think this is going to work. So regular information sharing is very key and very vital, so that everything runs smoothly. We also have, I think, some organizations, but I think in our area, we don't really have that, managing the expectations of traditional leadership. In some areas or some organizations, they face this, I would call it a challenge, quite a lot, where you go and you introduce yourself and you share what you want to do. And there are expectations that some traditional leadership have. For example, it will be, what's in it for me? How much am I going to get? What percentage am I going to get? Which becomes a very big problem for most organizations, because it makes the organization not to grow, or if you are there already, or if you want to start, it doesn't even start. But these are the things that you need to learn and constantly engage and teach us. We always say, and teach us that this is not about me as the person, as a traditional leader, but it's about the community. So we must always be capacitated, to know that everything that is done within the community, it's not about us, for us to gain individually as traditional leadership, but it's about the development of your community and the benefication of your community. How is your community going to benefit more than benefiting one person compared to the whole community? But it's always a problem, which we always caution people to always look at it, because it does happen. Many organizations, I'm sure they've experienced that. Because we are also we fall under the Department of Traditional Affairs, or a cooperative governance, if I can put it that way. That's the mother body, the mother department where we belong to. So we always encourage organizations to utilize us, to engage in so many levels of the departments, of government departments, because we play that role of becoming a cooperative governance. So wherever, if you are in education, if you are in health, if you are in social welfare, we always advise that you utilize your traditional leadership so that they can open all those doors, maybe that are locked, so that your organization or whatever program that you want to do is running effectively and efficiently. So what is more important in partnering with traditional leadership is to form, that solid relationship. Of course, when you start, it might not be as easy as it's supposed to be, because firstly, you need to learn each other. Have your goals, your clear goals, and say, this is what I want to do. And you might find that the traditional leadership, it doesn't really understand of what you want to do exactly. So when you're forming those relationships, it clears so many bottlenecks in your organization, so that you can work smoothly, to do everything that you want to do. So we always encourage strong partnerships and nurture those relationships with your traditional leaders. Engage them, capacitate them, because we really need to be capacitated as well in so many things, because we might not know everything. As much as it's a two-way process, because if you capacitate them, we capacitate you back, with information that you need, which is related to community dynamics and how the community works, what are the values of these communities, the culture of this community, and and everything. As we had said before, feedback is very important. Feedback and everything, just give feedback. Regular community meetings. We have something that we want to share with you as well. We have an NPO forum, because in our area, we have more than 2 NPOs that are operating there. So we have this NPO forum where each and every NPO reports, to traditional leadership, the programs that they want to do. And then at the beginning of the year, they put all their plans and say, okay, this is what we want to do. And we also have a WhatsApp group, which is formed, so that if you experience any problems, we might be able to assist and say, okay, this is how we're going to help you, or this is how the problem can be solved. So all levels of communication are very, very important, other than your normal community meetings, the forums where we meet, or even if we don't really meet in person, but we have a WhatsApp group where we can be able to share information of what is going on, or what is each organization is having a challenge on, and then so that we can be able to solve those problems efficiently and very quickly, of course.
Just and to say, we as the Bulungula Incubator have been very lucky I've been here more than 20 years, and our strong relationship with the traditional leaders here, I think, has been an absolute key to our success. It's important, often in the media one reads negative stories about traditional leaders, and often it's because there's some bad story that it gets put in the newspaper in the first place, and all the traditional leaders who are working hard and making a real difference don't get any media. So, one of the things to remember with traditional leaders, especially if you come from like I did, from a more sort of Western, let's say, upbringing, was that, the traditional leaders are the custodians of the culture and the long-term success of the community. So whereas politicians come and go quite quickly, we know that ward councillors can change every 5 years or so, the traditional leaders that are there over the long term and are really crucial to the longevity of projects surviving regular changes of political leadership, and often can really get the ear of government when it's big problems like with Eskom or water or other issues, or with education. often they can work really well as a complement to the other local government structures. So I really do want to emphasize the importance of working with them. We're going to jump across now to the next item where we'll both be talking. So this is working effectively with government. So I'll do the first 5 minutes, and then Nosinto will do the second. And we're just going to jump around here. So I think it's important to understand, there's a lot of negativity around government in South Africa. And the issue with that is that, I think NGOs need to decide what they are. If you're an organization that's looking to serve the community, then I feel that it's mostly counterproductive to get involved in politics. If you believe such and such a party is going to, change the country or whatever, that's great. But then I think you should be doing that either in your personal capacity or in an organization that is an activist organization in that space. But when you're working in a community that might have different political views of your own, you need to work with whoever's in government and whoever's in power. And that's definitely been one of the keys to our success. The important thing to know is that in our experience, and I mean, we're here in the Eastern Cape, which gets a lot of negative press when one talks about, government and service delivery and stuff. We found in all the departments that we work in, whether it's in health, whether it's in education, in social development, ESCOM, municipalities, you name it, you can always find good people who are doing their best to make a difference and have worked out a way to work with the system to actually get things done. And the key that we found is to identify those people and to work hand in hand with them, because generally they share the same goals that we do. They want to deliver health services or education, and will make whatever kind of plan they can to actually make it a reality. So I think it's really important to identify those characters and really build them up. And I really wish the media would do the same, because this endless reporting on failed individuals or failed projects isn't getting us anywhere. We need to start boosting the guys who are actually making a difference and actually get them to eventually lead their various departments and to actually improve the life for everyone. So I think it's important to when talking about government, you've got your politicians, obviously, and then you've got your civil servants. So understanding, first of all, what the needs of your politicians are, because they've got a very tough job. Ultimately, if they just quietly sit in a room and do amazing work and no one hears about it, they will become the next elections, they don't get elected, right? That's just the reality of politics. They do need exposure. And so what one needs to think about is, how does one, as an organization that's apolitical, give ward councillors and other officials, the mayor or someone else, a space to actually participate in what you're doing and get the positive, coverage of being associated with a great event that's maybe been done by your organization, but at the same time, not taking, all the glory for it, because that wouldn't be right either. And so one has to be thoughtful about it, because generally it's those same political actors, whether it's the mayor or the ward councillor or higher up in government, in terms of politics, who can actually fix big problems for you when it comes to your road needing to be fixed, or when you're needing access to important individuals, and then you can't just go running along. So there is a bit of a two-way relationship that's required, and I think one has to be very thoughtful about how one does that without compromising your values as an organization and without being losing your apolitical status. And then being thoughtful about it, and then actually engaging and giving them that space where they can be associated with your school, for example, and give talks there and inspire, for example, the matrics who are going to be writing the exams soon. And then there's an attachment developed with that school, and later on, when you need help with red tape or some problem, that you can go to those same politicians and they can help you. Similarly, understanding the needs of civil servants, who are obviously completely different to politicians. And there it's a case of making sure you don't, the worst thing you can do is embarrass a civil servant in front of their superiors. So it's important to understand the protocol and work as best you can with local officials, and only jump over them when you literally can't get anywhere. But as I said, I mean, finding the doers and working closely with them is part of that process. Similarly, remember that a civil servant, their worst fear is to get in trouble and to lose their job, right, by taking a risk on you. So you need to constantly be aware of how do you work with civil servants that doesn't force them to go out on a limb on your behalf and put their jobs and their lives at risk. And so, again, it needs thoughtful consideration. Each case is going to be different. But as that trust develops, and as the civil servants and the politicians realize that you haven't got a secret agenda and you aren't out there to show them up or make them look bad, then with that trust, amazing things can be done. And I think that's what's really great about the Eastern Cape, is the level of trust that we can develop on the ground with government, civil servants, and with politicians over the years. It allows incredible progress to be unlocked. And so I really encourage people to be constructive and to work out how they can work best with government, because this image of both, government as being just this group of people who are trying to profit off the suffering of other people, I think is exaggerated and doesn't represent what we see on the ground. And then, Fungi, I'll hand over to you to give your views on how one works constructively with government.
Thank you, Dave. I think what is more important in everything that we do is to build and nurture relationships, because even if you will be working with a national government, or you'll be working with provincial government, or the local municipality, your ward councillors, your mayors, or your traditional leadership for that matter, what is more important is the building of relationships with whoever that you think you're going to work with, or any stakeholder that you think you are going to work with. And I know, building those relationships, it's not an easy task. We often get, impatient, and it's because we don't understand each other or understand each other's goals and objectives. But once we build those relationships, we get to a stage where we understand each other's roles. And quite often we find that we have a common goal, which is to help, the traditional rural communities, be it you are an NGO, be it you are from the municipality, or be it you work for the Department of Social Development or Home Affairs. But the common goal here is to help, develop, traditional rural communities. So it is very key to nurture those relationships. It's not an overnight thing, if I can put it that way. It could take you a year, it could take you 2 years, it could take you, 6 months or so. One other thing that I want to add, which is also important, I know it doesn't add up on the working constructively with government, is something that Dave had mentioned before about the attendance of community meetings. I want to stress that it is very, very important. Just send someone there, for every community meeting that is there, because it is going to help you to pick up any community dynamics that might exist within that community, and which maybe that one community dynamic could be something that could hinder, your progress in your organization. So I want to stress that it is very, very important, and so that you are always on the, on the know what's going on. Even if there's still a goat or wherever, it's a community dynamic. It might come back into your organization in any other way. Yeah, I think that's more important. Building and nurturing relationships, I will always say, it's something that you need to do all the time, effortlessly. Be patient about it, but it will help you a very long way. Thanks.
Thanks, Fums. And then just in terms of the last few items there, obviously one needs to be very much aware of what the different levels of government are, because they're very different. What does a ward councillor do? What can they influence? Obviously it's roads and water primarily, a bit of electricity. And then similarly, provincial government doing most of your health and your education. and then national government doing the higher level things, that like Home Affairs and police and things like that. So being quite conscious of what the different levels do, and you'll need to work out when you need to involve which structure. The last point I'm going to make here is just around working. This is very short. It's just around working with other local NGOs and institutions in your area. I think it's really important, particularly in a rural setting. As time passes, you'll find more other NGOs will arrive and start doing work. You've got your schools, you've got your clinics, churches, you've even got your hospital. And in all of those organizations, there will be positive people who are trying to make a difference. And there's always a risk of reinventing the wheel and duplication. And so it's really important to, as soon as you can, try and set up a local NGO or development forum where, even if you meet twice a year or once a year, just to talk about what you guys are doing, then, it allows, first of all, to work out about synergies and overlap, and where you can learn from others who have already worked in the same area. But also, it can allow, if you find out that there's an organization doing something new and interesting in a neighboring community, it's often relatively straightforward to get them to come and offer that in your community too. So I just wanted to emphasize that in terms of engaging with stakeholders. That's a very important stakeholder that operates in our community. So that's it from our formal presentation side of things. So now, we're open to any questions on any topic related to what we chatted about. Just as it says there, please submit your questions in the comments in the chat box, or raise your hand on Zoom, and then we will hopefully see that raised hand. But I just wanted to thank those who are leaving now very much, and to thank my co-presenter, Nosintu Gwebindlala. It's our first webinar. Hopefully you didn't get disturbed. We're broadcasting from our clinic, which is vaccination day, so hopefully you didn't hear babies crying in the background while they got vaccinated. And feel free to ask any question to do with what we've been discussing today. So, and to those leaving, thank you very much.
Yeah, and from my side as well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has attended our webinar. As we said, it's our first one. We are hoping that we have given you as much information as we could, in order to build resilient communities, for the sustainability of your organizations. We're really looking forward to the questions, even if it's here or maybe in our inboxes. And we wish you all the best in your organizations. And anytime, it doesn't have to be end here in terms of questions and advices, especially on the traditional leadership side. Anytime we are will be ready for your questions or your comments or anything that you will need help on. And thank you very much.
I'm scrolling through comments. I haven't seen any questions there, and I haven't seen any hands. If someone's struggling with raising their hand, they're also welcome just to unmute themselves and talk, as long as you don't all talk at the same time. But otherwise, if we hear nothing in the next few minutes, we will assume no one has questions, and we will end the webinar.
Dave, it's Rajan here. I don't know if anybody else has a question, but otherwise I would just pose a question that was asked to me by somebody from another organization, a recent discussion. So so I'll just pose that. I thought it was an interesting question. In communities, people often wear different hats, so we've had that, and I think we've managed it quite well over the years, at Bulungula Incubator. You often have people that might be in the traditional leadership and they working in the organization, or they like with Nkosi Nosintu being chairperson of our board and part of the traditional leadership. There are different roles that you play, and you can also be, a mother or a family member, and you play, a particular role. And sometimes managing those conflicts can be tricky. Is there any advice as to how best to navigate that when you've got overlapping roles, which I think affects many community-based organizations? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll have a go, and Fungi, you can also have a go. One of the most important starting points, and I think this is true of just life in rural communities in general, is that a certain amount of trust has to be developed, because that's essentially what keeps a community together. It's not that everyone in the community is the same and has the same view on the world or exactly the identical culture or whatever. What it is there's a certain level of trust that's operating in the community that is underlying everything. And I think once you've got that level of trust, you can have these difficult conversations. For sure, they can be difficult, right? When there's conflicts of interest and you're trying to separate personal or different hats that you're wearing. But I think the only way to manage that is not to be shy to talk about it and to work out the best time to actually raise the issue. And often, they can, it doesn't happen often, but when they do happen, one has to try and just as human beings have the conversation and not keep it sort of hidden away or undercover, because inevitably it can lead to much bigger problems. One thing we have learned here is that our communities are incredibly aware and cognizant of precedent. And so if something was done before and then you do it differently the next time, or it's treated differently, that sense of unfairness and not following the trend that you've done previously is very quickly picked up on, and you invariably called to a meeting and asked to respond. So I think that's also got to be something that's part of your organizational culture, is to be thoughtful about tricky decisions. And when things come up, also, I find communities generally, if you just come and stand up and apologize or explain how it came about, people are very forgiving. But it needs honesty, and it needs, the bravery, let's say, of having difficult conversations, which can be sometimes with friends and neighbors and family and colleagues and things like that, in order to ensure that as an organization, you're sticking to your values. Fungi, I don't know if you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I do. And I've also noticed that we have another question as well from Ms. Twaita Sokoni. So I'll first answer this one, and then I will also answer the question from Twaita. Look, Rajan, it is a very tricky situation and a very difficult task to be in that position. Okay, myself, I am in that position to wear so many caps. One, you must be a member of the community. At the same time, you are a chairperson of the board. At the same time, you also run another organization. So, and then communities tend to confuse, quite a lot of things about your roles. But one thing that I would say is to say, as much as it is difficult as it is, but I think what is more important is to know your different roles, about if you are a chairperson, this is the role that I'm playing. In the community, this is the role that I'm playing. And then you kind of integrate all those roles that you play, because at they work with the same community. So you integrate those roles, together. And always be transparent about issues. I think that's the biggest thing. Always be transparent about issues. Don't have any hidden skeletons and whatever, because they might come back to you so badly. But I think what is more important in juggling different roles is transparency, so that they know this is the information that you give them in that organization, but this is the information that I'm giving them now as a traditional leader. But all that information, it's integrated and and verified information. Yeah, but it will always be a juggle, you know, to wear different caps. But you just need to be resilient yourself, and yeah, I think that's how I can explain it. And then there's a question again from Kwaita Sokoni, which says, which way is better when appointing a community liaison person? Should it be someone from the community or like a bona fide of that community, or could it be anyone as long they can do the job effectively? I think Kwaita, I would say it would be someone from the community, if I can put a suggestion, because that person knows that community in and out, knows the dynamics of that community, the history of the community, the values of the community, and then he or she can work on that role very well, because he's aware of what's happening even over the weekends. He's the one who attends everything, because some of the things about the organizations, you will hear them being spoken about at Mkidini or whatever. So, you know, those small community dynamics that we're talking about. But when you're someone from outside, it's going to be difficult for you. Firstly, you know, you have to know the community, and you can't know the community in a space of a week or a month or a year for that matter. So you might be missing some important information which doesn't come in a formal way. As I had said, some information you will hear it from Elalin, some you'll hear it wherever, not in a formal environment. So a person that is born from there, obviously, he must have good communication skills and, you know, understand issues and be able, you know, that person will be able to interact with the organization and also interact with the communities. So a person born in that village would definitely be the most preferred candidate for a community liaison officer.
Yeah, if I can also come in on Kwaita's question. You know, over the years, we've had a few different, you know, liaison employees, and what I must say, for sure, Nosinto is correct that they must come from the community. I can't think of a reason why that wouldn't be. That should always be the case, as far as I'm concerned. But what I would say with a liaison role, it's an unusually powerful role, because in many ways, it's the face of the organization that's discussing tricky things, and so you want to have someone that is 100% trustworthy, and someone whose values you feel truly embodies the values of the organization. Because it is possible for people to start, if you get unlucky and you appoint someone who's more of a sort of like a manipulative type personality, that they can actually cause a lot of problems for the organization. I've seen that before. And so in our experience, and this won't help new organizations very well, but in our experience, it made sense to employ a liaison person from within the organization, obviously someone who's, you know, from the community, but already working perhaps in a different role within the organization, that you feel that you absolutely trust and has the right values, who's going to, you know, be able to think on the fly in a community meeting and answer correctly. He's not just going to, or she's not just going to say, oh, I'll have to go back and ask someone else. You know, they can actually engage on a lot of the issues that will come up in your average community meeting. If you're a new organization or an organization that's in a new area, I think what you can do in that situation, if I was having to, you know, recruit now a community liaison in a brand new community, I would, first of all, as I said, in the recruitment practices, you go to the community meeting and saying, we're looking for this person. And then I think you have to be explicit. You can say, look, we would like the community to select 2 or 3 candidates, which we will interview, and then we will select the best. But I think up front, you need to also say, what are the values you're looking for? You know, you don't want mene, you know, because that's not the qualities you want in a liaison person. You want someone who's actually, you know, a straight talker and isn't a manipulator. And I think then in your interview process, you want to actually ask quite searching questions, ethical questions, and give some scenarios that the person could answer, and do your interview in that way. It's an interesting role because I don't think you need a high level of education at all. I don't even think you need to have completed high school. In fact, some of the most excellent people could be people who, in a sort of official sense, don't have a very high level of qualification, but they nevertheless are very skilled and people with a high level of ethics and values. But I think it's good to give scenarios, you know, including conflicts of interest and other tricky scenarios, and then ask, you know, in the interview process how they would deal with that. But that, I think, would be the way I would go about it if I was in an organization in a new area. I don't know if there's any other questions.
No, Dave, no questions at all. It's just comments from people commenting about the webinar and the information that we've shared, which they found it very informative. Yeah, that's all. You are muted. Dave. Okay, there is
comment from Kusula talking about it's not working in rural areas is not easy, and we are happy to see organizations that are making and willing to share their experiences. Trying to collaborate is not easy, as we tend to be competitive. Yeah, I think this. I think that talks also to that setting up these NGO forums. You know, the generally, I find that these feelings of competitiveness or negativity towards others is almost always, not just in the NGO sector, but in life in general, due to a lack of communication. And so creating a forum where guys can get together and, you know, preferably not just for a few hours during the day, but, you know, out here in the remote rural areas, we benefit from the fact that there's these various backpacker lodges along the coast. And so often what we do is we will have it over a weekend so that, you know, people actually hang out together and, you know, get to know each other around the fire, not just in a sort of meeting. And it's just amazing the kind of, you know, connections and you know, the relationships that develop out of that. So I can highly recommend that. Is create not just formal forums where you meet and talk about things formally, but actually informal spaces too, because ultimately we should all be chasing the same thing, which is to create you know, a better life for our communities.
Okay. There's another question, Dave. I'm sure you can take that one. It says, how do you select a board?
Yeah, okay, thanks Mpo. So yeah, that's a good question. You know, I'll just tell you, you know, our experience with that and see what you can learn from it. Is, you know, when often, you know, we were the founders of the organization. And so, you know, when there was nothing in the beginning, right? And one of the first things we did was select a board. And so we looked at people that we knew, friends, who were, you know, brilliant in different fields, you know, whether it was education or health or whatever, legal, and put together this board of people that we trusted and people that we, you know, had the right ethics and, you know, weren't in it. Obviously, our board, no one gets paid, and so it's a volunteer position. And for the first, yeah, that was the case for, you know, 10, 15 years. But there does come a time in the life of an organization where having a board made up of only friends is not actually the best way to, you know, run an organization, because obviously you need to have some difficult conversations sometimes and stuff. And so there comes a time where you need to transition away from that sort of structure of board and bring in independent people who aren't, you know, sort of weren't there from day one and sort of immersed in all the history and the long journey and the long story of the organization. and actually can look with fresh eyes and say, oh, hang on, why do you do things this way? Why not that way? And actually be a bit more critical and bring an alternative voice. So in terms of how you select a board, I think it depends on very much on the stage of your organization. If you're a brand new organization, it's relatively unrealistic to expect that you would just have total strangers who'd want to be part of a board of a new organization. That might just be a total waste of time. So they are likely to be friends, but I think it's always important to quickly realize that you need to bring independent voices as quick as realistically possible onto the board to make sure that you're not just an echo chamber where everyone's just agreeing with everyone because everyone is, friends and knows each other. So that's my best suggestion as far as selecting.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I also want to add, is our time up? It's okay. Or can I just quickly add?
Carry on.
Oh, okay. Just to add on that question, I think also is to look for, people that are going to share the vision of your organization, that you think they will share the vision of your organization, and also people that will bring skills and also contribute, to the growth of the organization and of course the sustainability of the organization. So I think those are the two biggest things that you need. And also in your board, make sure, when you've chosen all these people that have the skills, different skills, to build the organization, but don't forget to have a community a representative on the board, someone who's going to represent the interest of the communities, and also someone who's going to be the voice of the board, through the communities, because by having a community representative, it makes the community understand how the organization work and all the things that the organization do in order to put the programs that they do through the communities. Often communities do not understand a whole lot of things. They will always say, oh yeah, they go and fundraise, but they fundraise, on our behalf, it's our money, this, that, and that, all the small community dynamics that can destroy the organization. But that person will be there to understand how the organization works and be able to impact or give out that information that this is how the organization works, in order for us to, to have this organization that is sustainable and, bringing jobs and, all the development that the organization is doing. Then that person will be, the perfect person, to be an in between the organization and also the community. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, I think that's all the chats and all the hands and everything we've done with it. So just to mention as we close out here that this is our second webinar that we've done. For me and Nosinto, it's our first as peering, but this is the Bulungula Incubator second one, and we will be doing them relatively regularly. So look out for future ones. And anyone who's listening, if you've got any more questions that you want to ask, feel free to reach out to us. By email, or it's pretty easy to get hold of both of us if you contact the Bulungula Incubator, and you'll get connected with us. So feel free to do so. We're very happy to share any advice we can give. And thanks very much. And we hope to see you at our next webinar in the next month or 2 or 3. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.